To this day, no Christian has invited my mom into her home, except for my friends, but that doesn't count. No one in her community has ever reached out and invited her. They see the burqa and all of a sudden they get afraid. And so my mom has not had the opportunity to see what real Christian life is like. Instead, what she's told is that America is a Christian nation. Then she looks at the TV and sees all the crazy stuff happening on Hollywood and all the stuff happening in celebrities' lives. And she hears what's happening in the news and the murders and the rapes and all this and that. And she says, this is a Christian nation. This is what Christianity is all about. You know, if people would just reach out, perhaps we'd be able to take care of that, but we don't, unfortunately. So for 30 plus years, my mom has been here, and no one in the community has just invited her to say, this is what it's actually like. And so she wants to train me as a young Muslim, not just to be a good Muslim, but to also not get affected by Christianity, to not be tainted by that. And so from a very young age, she would teach me how to respond to Christianity. She gave me books to read to say, this is why Christianity is false. You know, what sense does it make to say that a man died on a cross for your sins? How does that even work? What sense does it make to say that God is 3 in 1? What sense does it make to say that the Bible is reliable when we've seen all these issues with it? I was reading these books from childhood, and so when people were coming to me, and it very rarely happened, but when people came to me to share the gospel with me, I was trained with a response to give to them so that they would be turned around. In fact, there was a very specific time that I recall in high school, and my friend Betsy came to me and she said, Nabeel, do you know Jesus? My response to her was, yes, I know Jesus. The Quran teaches me all about Jesus. It teaches me that Jesus is virgin born, that he's the most miraculous man who ever lived, that he's able to cleanse lepers and heal the blind and raise the dead. The Quran teaches me that Jesus is in fact the sinless Messiah, and his return is going to be in the latter days. The Quran teaches me all this. I know Jesus. And she apparently didn't know that because she didn't know what to say next. So I continued for her and I said, but I also know, Betsy, that Jesus is not God. And she says, no, Nabeel, that's the most important part. Jesus is God. And I said, really, do you actually believe that? Because I've looked through the Gospels and I don't know anywhere he claims to be God. Let's assume for the sake of this conversation, Betsy, that the Bible is reliable. I think it's been changed. I don't think it's trustworthy, but let's just say it hasn't been changed. Where does Jesus say he is God in the Gospels? And she thought about it and she said, well, doesn't Jesus say the Father and I are one? I say, yeah, but if I say I'm one with someone, I'm not saying I am that person. It means I'm united with them. I'm unified with them in spirit. That's why Jesus says that he prays for the disciples to be one, just as he is one with the Father. He's not saying he's God. You know, if you want to see what Jesus says about himself, why not go to the Gospel of Mark, where Jesus is going through the towns and villages in Galilee, and he could do no miracles? Are you telling me God can't do miracles? What about in the Gospel of Luke, where it says Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature? How can God grow in wisdom and in stature? And as I'm sharing these things with her, I'm seeing her confidence wane because she hasn't thought about these things before. And I saved the biggest one for last. I said, Betsy, if you want to quote the Gospel of John, why not go to that verse where Jesus says, the Father is greater than I? I would believe Jesus if I were you. God is greater than he is. Now, if you want to know about Jesus, ask me about Islam, and I will share Islam with you. And so I was able to take her evangelism, her attempt at sharing the gospel, and turn it around into my own dawah, my own invitation for her to accept Islam. It was really easy to do because she hadn't thought about the evidence behind her faith, the reasons for why she believed what she believed.